Donald Trump and I actually agree on something. Now, please don't click away just yet because I suspect many of you are going to agree with him too. We both can't stand JD Vance. I truly believe this in my bones. Donald Trump genuinely despises JD Vance. And right now, fresh reports are coming out of the White House that Trump is making some very ugly, very personal comments about his own vice president, all while Vance is desperately trying to distance himself from this deeply unpopular war in Iran that most Americans never wanted in the first place. Why? Because JD Vance is already positioning himself for a 2028 presidential run. More than anything else in this world, this man wants to be the Republican nominee for president. And Donald Trump just made that dream a whole lot harder. He's throwing JD Vance under the bus, and in the process, he's actively destroying whatever future political career Vance might have had. Here's the truth that ought to make every one of you watching, especially those of you who've worked hard your whole lives, paid your taxes, and hoped for a better country for your kids and grandkids, sit up and pay attention. Trump doesn't just hate Vance, he kind of hates all the other would-be contenders too. He doesn't want anyone overshadowing him, even in his own party. It's almost funny in a very dark way what Trump said just yesterday. When you put it side by side with something Marco Rubio said that we covered on this show, it tells you everything you need to know about what's really happening inside this administration and how it all circles back to JD Vance and the moment Trump decided to throw him under the bus. This one is going to make your blood boil.
Imagine in Iran that instead of spending their wealth, billions of dollars supporting terrorists or weapons, had spent that money helping the people of Iran, you'd have a much different country.
We have to take care of one thing, military protection. The United States can't take care of daycare. That has to be up to a state. We can't take care of daycare. We're a big country. We have 50 states. We have all these other people. We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. It's not possible for us to take care of daycare. Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things.
That is precisely the message Donald Trump is sending to every American, especially to those of you who have worked hard your whole lives, paid your taxes faithfully, and now watch as those hard-earned dollars disappear into endless wars instead of the things your families actually need. He's telling you, plain and simple, I am spending your money on bombs for a war that most of you never asked for and never supported, instead of helping with daycare for your grandchildren, instead of protecting your Medicare and Medicaid, instead of fixing the roads you drive on every single day, instead of addressing any of the basic needs that so many working families are struggling to meet right now. Because, according to him, we're too busy fighting wars to take care of our own people at home. And that is exactly why JD Vance is so desperate to separate himself from this war. It's not only because he has positioned himself as some kind of isolationist, it's because this position is politically toxic, and for very good reason. When you hear that clip of Marco Rubio, it's almost painful that it isn't playing on loop on every news channel in the country. Democrats have failed to reclaim their role as the true anti-war party, and we desperately need more voices who can play that clip and ask with a straight face, isn't that exactly what we've been doing for far too long, Donald? Because that is what you do. That is what we have done for decades. We have wasted far too much time and far too many trillions pouring our national treasure into bombs and foreign conflicts while our own communities are left behind. And speaking of childcare, JD Vance has some thoughts of his own on the subject, thoughts that become even more revealing when you consider how Donald Trump has just thrown him under the bus.
So one of the ways that you might be able to relieve a little bit of pressure on people who are paying so much for daycare is make it so that maybe like grandma or grandpa wants to help out a little bit more. Or maybe there's an aunt or uncle that wants to help out a little bit more. If that happens, you relieve some of the pressure on all the resources that we're spending.
Hey, JD, let me ask you a simple common sense question that so many grandparents watching right now are probably thinking. Can those same grandmas and grandpas actually help take care of their grandkids if they're still forced to work because they can't afford their own health care? If everything is getting more expensive under this economy, and if they're already stretched thin trying to help support both their adult children and their grandchildren at the same time, the answer, of course, is no. The answer is clearly no. You see, the reason so many grandparents today can't step in to help with the grandkids is because this administration's policies have pushed them right back into the workforce. They're working longer hours, deeper into their retirement years, simply because they can't afford to stop. The economy has been hollowed out for working families, and older Americans are paying the price every single day. Yet here's JD Vance, blaming grandparents for not doing enough around the house to watch the children, suggesting that the solution to the childcare crisis is just to ask grandma and grandpa to pitch in a little more. This kind of tone-deaf suggestion tells you everything you need to know. It reveals a man who seems completely out of touch with the daily struggles so many American families, especially seniors, are facing right now. No wonder so many people are turning against him. And make no mistake, Donald Trump feels the same way. He made that perfectly clear just today, right before he threw Vance under the bus yet again. Here's what the president had to say about his own vice president during the White House event.
The White House, including Vice President JD Vance. I think is JD here? Where's JD? JD. He's lost weight. He got a little thinner, and I'm looking for a heavy set gentleman, and now I find a perfect looking specimen. He's doing a great job.
I'm sure that's exactly what every vice president dreams of, hearing from their own boss, especially in front of the entire White House staff and cameras rolling. Wow, you used to look fat and disgusting, JD. You looked so gross. How did you ever manage to look so gross? Imagine working for a president who publicly mocks your appearance like that right in front of everyone. That's not leadership. That's the kind of petty humiliation most working Americans have seen from bad bosses over the years, and it never sits well with decent people. I told you, Donald Trump truly despises JD Vance. He really does. And it's becoming clearer by the day that he's not just mocking him, he's actively trying to ruin his political future. And his latest move may go a very long way toward doing exactly that. Here's what Trump posted on Truth Social early Friday morning, ordering his vice president to launch a crusade against blue states. Trump orders Vance to launch crusade against blue states in Morning Rage post. Donald Trump has ordered his vice president to target Democrat-led states as he leads a new nationwide anti-fraud task force. Vice President JD Vance is now in charge of fraud in the United States. The president announced it in a Truth Social blast early Friday morning. His focus will be everywhere, but primarily in those blue states where crooked Democrat politicians like those in California, Illinois, Minnesota, Somalia, Beware, Maine, New York, and many others have had a free-for-all in the unprecedented theft of taxpayer money. Trump himself is the only convicted felon in U.S. history to have assumed the office of the president after being found guilty in 2024 of falsifying business records over hush money payments to an adult film star. A court also found him liable in a sweeping New York civil fraud case for inflating the value of his properties and net worth over more than a decade. A finding upheld on appeal in August 2025. Seems like a lot of fraud to me. Now, vice presidents have always been handed the difficult, thankless jobs that nobody else in the administration wants to touch. But telling the American people that JD Vance is now personally responsible for balancing the entire federal budget by rooting out fraud that this administration insists is rampant, especially in blue states, is more than just ironic. It's almost cruel in its absurdity. Donald Trump has now sent Vance out on what amounts to a nationwide speaking tour as part of this so-called fraud czar mission. Vance is going to have to get in front of crowds and cameras and talk about fraud. Let me be very clear. JD Vance is a political chameleon who has spent years reshaping himself to fit whatever the moment demands. Most Americans simply don't buy what he's selling, especially when he's the one delivering the speech. But here's what I can promise you will actually happen every single time Vance steps in front of the public. Reporters are going to ask him the questions this White House desperately wants to avoid. They're going to ask about the war in Iran. They're going to ask about the Epstein files. They're going to ask about the obvious infighting inside the administration. And they're going to ask what Vance is really thinking about when it comes to 2028. Those are exactly the questions that drive Donald Trump crazy. He does not want anyone talking about the day he is no longer president. He does not like the conversation about life after Trump. And those conversations are coming sooner than he wants because whether he admits it or not, he is already a lame duck. JD Vance knows it too. He is actively trying to position himself, trying to work around Trump, trying to get the stink of this administration off him, but he hasn't been able to. He's not been able to separate himself. And we're not even 2 years into this term. Imagine how much worse it's going to get for Vance. Imagine how poorly he will be viewed when he finally enters the 2028 primary. At this point, I think we can say it plainly, JD Vance is not going to be the Republican nominee, and a very large part of that is because Donald Trump is actively ruining his political career. And the truth is, Trump seems perfectly fine with it. He hates the guy. Why wouldn't he? Here's something very important that a lot of older Americans who've followed politics for decades will immediately recognize. JD Vance was not chosen by accident. He was carefully selected to be Donald Trump's running mate. After the assassination attempt, Trump became deeply worried about his own safety and who might come after him next. People close to him, Don Jr., Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel, convinced Trump that Vance was the safe choice, a young isolationist, just as MAGA as Trump himself, someone who wouldn't be controlled by the old neoconservative establishment. Why did they push so hard? Because Elon wanted Vance installed. Peter Thiel wanted Vance installed. These powerful donors and oligarchs saw Vance as useful. Let's not forget, JD Vance's entire political career was largely financed by Peter Thiel. The largest individual donation ever made in a U.S. Senate race came in 2022 during Vance's tight primary. 2 years later, he was vice president with almost no governing experience. The only real experience he had was sharply criticizing Donald Trump. The irony here is unmistakable. Vance is now quietly trying to distance himself and protect his own future, just as Trump is doing the exact same thing to him. Vance is trying to undermine Trump in small ways to preserve himself. Trump is returning the favor by dragging him down publicly and privately. We've reported on the mocking and the shots Trump has taken at Vance inside the White House. We just saw him call him Tubby on camera. Trump thought Vance would be easy to control. He thought Vance wouldn't overshadow him. That calculation is clearly not working out. Vance is struggling. He is losing support from the donor class. He is losing support from the MAGA base. And he remains attached at the hip to Donald Trump. He cannot break away the way other potential 2028 contenders can. While Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Ron DeSantis, or even Thomas Massie can criticize Trump from a safer distance, Vance cannot. So Trump is pulling him down with him, hurting him with the base, humiliating him in public, and now forcing him to solve the entire U.S. budget crisis by hunting for fraud. I don't think that's going to happen. By the way, all of this comes as Donald Trump is requesting a staggering $1.5 trillion military budget for 2027. That brings us right back to the clip we played earlier because it may be the most honest thing Donald Trump has said in a very long time. Here it is again.
We can't take care of daycare. We're a big country. We have 50 states. We have all these other people. We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare.
We're fighting a war. We can't do childcare. That is exactly what Donald Trump told the American people. And right now he is asking for a staggering $1.5 trillion military budget for 2027. Think about that for a moment. He openly admits we can't afford to help families with daycare, with Medicare, with the basic needs of working Americans because we're too busy fighting wars and pouring money into the Pentagon. Yet this administration promised to invest in America first. They have done the exact opposite. And now they've handed JD Vance the impossible job of going around the country pretending to hunt for fraud when the real fraud is the broken promises coming out of this White House. Here's the cold hard truth. Donald Trump isn't just torpedoing JD Vance's political career. He's shooting himself in the foot and dragging Vance down with him. And the longer this goes on, the clearer it becomes to every senior, every grandparent and every taxpayer watching. Your hard-earned money, your children's future, and this country's priorities are being sacrificed for endless wars and political revenge. I have to admit, watching it unfold has been something else. If you've stayed with me all the way to the end, I want to hear from you. Drop a blue heart in the comments. Tell me honestly, what do you think is really happening between Trump and Vance? If this kind of straight talk matters to you, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Keep paying attention, folks. The show is far from over. Until next time, I'll see you soon.